Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Moz, TV reporter at TheWrap. We are so happy to have you here for our 2021 award screening of The Boys with Rebecca Sonnenshine, executive producer and writer, and Aya Cash, actor. We're going to be showing you the trailer, and then we'll go right into a conversation with our panelists. To our audience, please participate in the live chat of the stream, sharing your thoughts about the show, and let us know where everyone is tuning in from. Now, before we introduce our special guest, here is the trailer for The Boys.
We did it. Yay!
It's good. You'll love it.
Welcome back. It is my pleasure to introduce Rebecca Sonnenshine, executive producer and writer, and Aya Cash, actor. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So I wanted to start with getting the nomination for Outstanding Drama is a big deal in a landscape where, for the first time, a superhero show didn't get a huge nomination and award like that till Watchmen. And this season, we not only had The Boys get nominated, but we had WandaVision get nominated in limited series. And I wanted to ask you guys what you think has taken so long for superhero as a genre to be recognized by the Television Academy and as something prestigious, especially because genre in general doesn't seem to be something they shy away from. Game of Thrones, one drama series for years.
I think, comics started, sort of superhero stuff started as sort of pulp or B movie, has sort of a pedigree of that. But over time, people just have the opportunity to explore so many facets of the superhero genre, really bring out the themes and the drama of it in a way that wasn't really afforded to television in earlier times, because it kind of has this history of not being taken seriously. And I think as writers and directors and producers come up, and it's been part of their lives for so long, and it's been very meaningful to people, and as comics have explored deeper social issues and themes, that it just becomes even more fertile for really great drama and really great performances. And I think that's what people respond to.
I think everything sucked before Watchmen and The Boys. I think that's pretty clear. No, I do think that we stick with what we know. It's also why we, pay money to see the same people play different roles over and over again. We like what we are familiar with. So it sometimes takes a second if something is doing something slightly different to adjust to that. So thank you, Watchmen, for paving the way for The Boys.
So Rebecca actually spoke with Eric Kripke yesterday, who, for those who don't know, is the showrunner of The Boys, and he gave all the credit for gender flipping Stormfront, which is Aya's character in season 2, to you. And so for those who don't know, Stormfront was a character in the source material for The Boys, the comic book series. Rebecca, can you talk about why you thought it was a good idea to gender flip, why it would work, if you had any concerns about why it wouldn't, and then bringing in Aya to play this gender flip version of the character?
Yeah, so I think there was a few factors at play. One of them was simply that at the end of season 1, we lost a major female character that was very important in Homelander's life, and so I think Eric came in with the idea that he did want to bring Stormfront as a character in, but for the sake of the show and our characters, it really seemed the best idea to me and to everyone that Homelander have a really strong female character to play against, and challenge him. And then we wanted to bring in this character, so I mean, it was kind of a neon flashing sign that we should just combine those two things into the same character. there's also the idea that there's something about Stormfront as a male that we've explored, the comics have explored and pop culture has explored, but there's sort of this insidious nature of a female persona that makes the ideas of white supremacy more palatable to people, or it's a little more like stealth, because it comes wrapped in a nice package where people are fun and pretty and make it go down easier. So it just seemed like it, and you could see it out there. It certainly was happening out in the world. So so it seemed like a really great moment to sort of seize upon that. And then we were just lucky enough to have Aya come in. You're such an amazing actress. I was such a big fan of yours from your previous work, and when we saw the audition, I think we were all like, oh my god, this is going to be amazing. I actually wrote the sides for the character. I don't know if you know that, but we had to like cast early because of the suits, got to get those going, and we didn't have anything written, so I just took a wild stab at some scenes and hoping that they would be like sort of in the realm of where we were going.
Some of it made it in. I feel like it was a different line, but something about his eyes, there was like a little bit that made it in from the audition. The actual show. And thank you, by the way, for the job. I didn't realize that I owe my entire boys' career to you gender flipping Stormfront. Thank you.
So let's talk about your portrayal of Stormfront and how you went about building that character, because spoiler alert, but not really if you're watching this, Stormfront is a literal Nazi, and we find out that she has been coming back in different iterations as a superhero for decades, spreading the same hate and the feelings that she has, but she comes about it in this insidious way where at first we think she's got good ideas and she's on TikTok and she's presenting herself as someone who supports America and wants everything to be good and not in the way that at all we would want. So how did you go about building a character who is decades old and presenting decades old, hateful ideas, but in this like fresh way to try and reach like the young people?
Well, unfortunately, there are real world examples all over the place. So those old hate is new again in this new social media world that we live in. So there were lots of examples, and Eric and I had talked about, even in the audition, some real world people who exemplified this style, this brand of hatred that she's spewing. And I steal this from the doc about Nexium, but nobody joins a cult, right? So nobody joins something thinking it's a cult. They join something that they think is good. And I think Stormfront understands that you need to draw people in slowly and specifically, because if she has a line at the end, they just don't like the word Nazi. If she comes out waving the Nazi flag, she's not gonna wield as much power as she would with some more coded language. So I feel like I had lots of examples to draw from in the real world, unfortunately. And in terms of the age thing, I just assumed they'd CGI me frozen, and I could I could pull that off. If Stormfront ever comes back in a small form, I'm hoping that there is lots of CGI to keep you young.
So not to dive really into season 3 at all, but I want to talk about the finale episode because Rebecca, you wrote it, and you had a huge part in it with the end of Stormfront and how this all comes to a head and how we see the battle between Butcher and Homelander affect Stormfront in the end here. So Rebecca, how did you go about developing, how this would come to an end? Didn't seem like something that was going to end well to begin with, but how Stormfront would be affected by this conflict between the two, and the son, who is a supe, not knowing how to control his power and coming face to face with Stormfront.
Yeah, well, it was certainly, I mean, we knew where we wanted to end the season when we started. So that, and then you sort of write towards that, and everything is sort of like this scaffolding, this architecture that every episode plays a part in. So, you know, for example, we start Stormfront as like this fun character who's like a truth teller that does sound appealing, especially to Starlight as somebody who may have ideas about how to be a stronger person and to get more of her own self into what she's doing instead of hiding behind. And then we just quickly start twisting it. But we have to lay all the seeds so that we're taking the audience on a journey, you know, because it's the seduction of the audience the same way that these personalities seduce regular people. But we definitely knew that we wanted this is how we wanted it to end, and we wanted it to be sort of a challenge to Homelander's worldview. I think Homelander above all is like so selfish that ideals are not really his at the forefront of his mind. He really is all about himself. So to come into contact with a character who has such crazy, you know, really strong ideology is, regardless of the ideology, he's sort of really more about himself. So anyway, like Stormfront, she kind of insults and terrorizes everyone, and so the trick to the final episode was like everybody needs to get their revenge. Everybody needs a piece of Stormfront in some way. And that was a little bit tricky to give everyone their day with Stormfront. So we wanted everyone, you know, we wanted Starlight to have it. We wanted A-Train to get his revenge. We wanted, you know, we wanted Kimiko to have her revenge, and even Maeve. And so, and then, you know, having Ryan, you know, explore his powers that have been so far hidden. So it was just sort of a laying in seeds all the way along, and then figuring out how everybody can get a little moment with the enemy before she is vanquished for now.
That made a very busy episode for you, as Rebecca detailed. Everyone wanted a piece of you. But in particular, apart from the finale scene where Stormfront gets her legs blown off and her like face burned all up, the girls coming at each other, I thought was such an interesting fight scene to see, based on all of the like crap that Vought gave us with the like girls get it done slogan that gets flipped on its head in the finale by them being presented in one way as superheroes by Vought to like package them, and then how we actually see them, and we actually see them in their full power and what that was like. So what was it like for you shooting that scene where it wasn't like some slogan and it wasn't girls get it done, it was an actual fight against a villain and on principles and what these women believe in and are capable of?
It was great. I mean, you know, I was also rooting for Stormfront to be destroyed. You know, it wasn't like I mean, as an actor who loved my job, of course, I wanted to stick around, but I think she deserved to be torn limb from limb, and I thought it was a really great way to take her down, especially because we'd set up this premise of the feminist lip service of the corporation. So to be able to see that sort of come to fruition, and is it Frenchie who says girls really do get done? Someone says it, and it, you know, it's so tongue in cheek. What I love about The Boys as a fan who came on for a season is how it sort of takes the expectation and then sort of subverts it, both within the genre and within these little moments. So you're expecting maybe Butcher, who is the lead, the hero ish. I mean, they're all anti-heroes. Or Huey come in, and the fact that it's all the women coming together for a group cause is really enjoyable.
So a lot of the boys from season 1 through 2 now presents superheroes as celebrities and kind of as actors. They are even in movies. And so I wanted to know how much you take your own experience into that, because we literally see you in like a junket, like answering questions as a superhero doing that. And it's such an interesting way to see these superheroes in this fictional world portrayed as stars and selling things. And so what that's like for you, if you use your own experience as an actor in the part of it where you're an actor.
Well, Stormfront's a much bigger celebrity than I am, so I don't really have the experience that she does. I do not get mobbed in restaurants or, those press junkets. The closest experience I've had is actually for The Boys, and that was during COVID. So, I'd never done something on that scale. So I wasn't able to draw too much from my own experience. But, Zack Snyder's been calling me, and no, I'll bring my experience from The Boys to my impending celebrity. I have no idea.
I feel like Stormfront would do well in a virtual junket. I feel like she would handle the digital aspect.
Well, clearly, I was told my internet's unstable. Clearly, mine is not. There's some difference. I'm such a good actor. I pretend to be technologically literate.
Rebecca, asking you about the rest of season 2 and incorporating not just Stormfront's arc, which was a huge one throughout the season and affected everyone in different ways. How you went about as a writer's room building season 2 in general, because a show that had such a strong response got renewed before it had even launched, and they announced Io was coming in for season 2 before the show had even premiered its first season. So what it was like going into a writer's room where there's already a fear in general of having a sophomore slump on any show, but on a show that already has this much going into the very beginning, what that was like for you guys and how you went about continuing to adapt something that has source material while deciding how you were going to build upon it in a second season.
Yeah, well, I think, Eric has a very strong idea about, what kind of things he wanted to accomplish. And a lot of the first season is sort of setting up the world. So there's a lot of setup in season 1 that is very fun and exciting. And there's a huge sort of plot, but a lot, we kind of bring the characters in one by one. So in some ways, we have this great jumping off point for a season. Like the team is together, but they've gone through this thing together, and then they've fallen apart, which is a great place to pick up a season. And we've also left our lead Butcher, our main character Butcher, with a completely, like, everything he's been fighting for is completely flipped. Like, his wife is alive. And that's all he's ever wanted was revenge, and she was the center of his world. And so that goal of getting her back somehow and then putting a million obstacles in his way, I'm kind of a romantic. So I love that. I love that story so much. I love where it ends up. I mean, it's tragic, obviously, but playing that love story, I know it's a superhero show, but playing that really very grounded love story and the desperation that it puts, Butcher, who's so confident and cocky, and just stripping like some of that away to see his vulnerability was very exciting to all of us. And then having Homelander sort of get everything he wants, like he's on top of the world, he's got a kid, and then having things slowly chip away at his confidence as a person, as a father. That's what makes the show so interesting, is that he's the strong, these superheroes are stronger than, you can't fight them. Like a human can't fight them, they won't win. But if you get at their human, like, vulnerabilities, of which they all have very big weaknesses, it's very relatable and it's fun. And getting, Huey and Annie back together. all those things were so fun. So we knew we had all these big stories we wanted to tell. And then the comics are inspiring for all the fun characters and details that we can sort of use along the way. And then, wanting to say something about the world. There's, obviously we're saying things about, the rise of Nazism and sort of alt-right, ideals in the country. But we're also saying things, about like the girls get it done. That it's about like advertising and the co-opting of great ideas. There's stuff about gun control. There's all kinds of cool things that we were able to explore while we were doing it. So that's kind of how we went about setting up the season, and then just sort of building towards the finale, which is what you do.
Along with so many dramatic points in the season and funny points too. The Boys is a fun show. But you guys have some amazing stunts and visual effects. So I wanted to ask you both. I wanted to ask about the superhero sex scene with Anthony, Homelander and Stormfront. That's a wild scene where we see them have sex in midair, as superheroes would be able to do, I assume. And then Rebecca asked about blowing up the whale and the conception of blowing up a whale in the pilot. So can you start with superhero sex in the air?
I just want to say, sometimes people ask me if we actually have sex on camera, and that's shocking to me. And I feel like now I can just point to this scene and be like, we can't fly it either. Like, see, like now you understand that this is not. I'll cut that out, I'm sure. It's wild. I mean, the special effects are bonkers on this show. They're so well done, it's amazing to watch back, because I don't tend to like to watch myself, but when I loved watching The Boys because there is so much magic on top of what we shot with the special effects. So it's just enjoyable to see the things that you're maybe like, I feel a little silly doing this, or they just make you look great anyway. So it's really fun to see all that. And yeah, the flying and fight choreography of that made this one of the most enjoyable sex scenes I've ever shot, because they're always awkward and uncomfortable. And that made it so specific in a way that we had to hit our, it was a violent scene. There was, in a harness. It was so much fun because it felt like doing a stunt scene rather than a sex scene. I've talked about the merkin. I'm not going to go into the merkin anymore. But special effects did wonders with what I was wearing as well.
Rebecca, the whale.
The whale.
Top the superhero sex by talking about the whale.
Yeah, I mean, so the whale sort of sprung out of that was an episode written by Craig Rosenberg, who's now has a reputation for going after sea creatures, and he had written the dolphin scene in episode 4 of the first season. And so in some ways it just started as, how do we top ourselves? But it also felt like we were also, and so it was obviously a very ambitious thing, and we tried many we spent a lot of days in the writer's room. Like we have these whiteboards, and like, how do we get this to happen in New York? Like, does he jump out of the river? Is there a whale? Does Deep summon a whale down the river? Are they driving down the highway? That was it for a while. But then this image of Huey, who is going through a real crisis. He was, he's almost kind of losing his shit. He's sort of doesn't believe in himself. He's kind of obsessing over this video. He's wanting to be Billy Joel. What's happening here? And the idea of him in the belly of this whale just became a very powerful sort of image to us. So, I think we doubled down and we tried to figure out. I mean, that was quite an episode, you know. That's the you know, what I really appreciate about a show like The Boys is that it goes from this incredible spectacle, just doing the craziest thing you can imagine, down to these tiny little moments of character. And that seemed to combine both of them, right? Like Huey's in the belly of this whale thinking like, I can't go on, I'm paralyzed with fear, and they have to talk him out of it. So it's like this tiny character moment, but there's also, they just drove a boat through a whale.
And it was a practical whale, by the way. There was giant, like, but it looked almost like it looks on TV up close. I mean, it was spectacular and sticky and stinky, and I mean, it was kind of an amazing practical piece. But then, obviously, you know, that great shot above where the boat actually rams and you sort of see it open up, obviously, is special effects. But there was a big practical whale on the beach, which was very cool.
Yeah, it was an anatomically correct whale, right? It was like a literal.
I mean, I didn't see any bits, but I can sure.
So I brought up a lot of my favorite moments and made you guys talk about them. So I would love to hear your favorite moments from the season. Starting with your favorite scene to shoot, and then Rebecca, either your favorite to write or to see play out on screen.
I mean, you know, I'm gonna give a crappy answer, which is there are so many. Most of it was really great to shoot, and every time I say an answer to this question, like, it becomes something else, I feel like, the next time. But I really, in the very beginning, there is just this one scene with Starlight that where I have a Pippi Longstocking speech that I love so much. Written by someone we know, and I also grew up watching Pippi Longstocking movies and reading those books, so it was like particularly fun to do that speech. And I think Erin had never heard of Pippi Longstocking, so it was very much a moment of like the two of us being in our characters, and obviously, very quickly after that episode, the next episode is when Stormfront turns. So it's really fun in that moment to be that sort of character who you think is going to be really great and really positive and a feminist and a ballbuster, and then she's not. And sort of trying to figure out the moments, even in that, where like, are there moments where there's something else going on? Like, because I, as the actor, already know what's going to happen. You can't tip the scale. So I loved shooting that with Erin.
That was very exciting for me too. I have to say, I was obsessed with Pippi Longstocking as a kid, so it was super fun. There's a couple moments that I wanted to talk about. The deep and his gills that sang to him, and that was one of my favorite things to pitch over and over to Eric in the room, because I would sing it every time, like the whole song. So I loved seeing that come to life. And then my favorite, I have to say, my favorite moment from the finale is the Butcher and Becca scene where he's trying to get her to go in the car and leave, and she doesn't want to go, and he's saying like, I'm bad for you, because he's been fighting for her the whole season, and in a kind of a selfish way. I mean, that's just who Butcher is, but he realizes in that moment that he has to let her go. And it's really heartbreaking, and Carl and Chantal are so amazing in that scene, and that's everything I love in a show, you know, like these incredibly like grounded character moments. As much as I love all the, you know, I love the fight scene where the girls get it done, but this is my favorite scene.
When you sang to Eric, did you do it in a Patton Oswalt voice? Like, did you already have him in your head?
No, I did the Joe Cocker version, you know, because that's what was in my head. And Apple Music thinks that's still one of my favorite songs, which I guess it is now. But I sang the Joe Cocker version.
Speaking about, we've talked about so many of the dramatic moments, but Boys, like I said, is a very funny show, and I appreciate so many of those moments. And I wanted to ask you guys about, the line between drama and comedy is so blurred these days, and a lot of it's decided by literally like length of time of what an episode is. But The Voice has so much drama in it, but also balances it with a lot of snark and a lot of deadpan comedy, and then there's a lot of laugh out loud moments too. But kind of want to ask you guys about that balance and striking it and what that means for you, if there's ever times when you feel like, well, this is too funny and we can't do this, or this is too dramatic and we can't do this, and how to strike that balance, or if it's not as much a concern because you're not too worried about it being a drama or a comedy or fitting in one box.
Well, from the writer's perspective, I do think we always are. It is a really fine line to write all the time. What we're looking for is things that feel true, So if comedy is just there to be silly or to be outrageous, then it usually it's almost the thing about the whale, Yes, it's funny to go through a whale, but it's also about this character moment. So as long as we can draw things back to that, or as if it's sort of like, it when you see it. That's with Eric, he'll say like, oh, that's too broad, or no, that's right. It's really looking for the nugget of truth in things. And then, in particular, Aya is very, so good at these little moments and making them feel very true. So they're funnier because they feel real, even though they're a joke. So it's almost trying to throw things away sometimes. And we're just lucky that we have an amazing cast who can really make everything feel real in that way.
I'm mostly funny by mistake anyway. I mean, that's generally I'm usually, the biggest laugh is usually one where I'm like, I was trying to be really serious about that. But I like my comedies dark and my dramas light. I mean, I think that's more true to life. I mean, Mythic Quest has made me cry, and that is a straight up comedy, but there is such heart and truth to the situations and pain in that comedy that it's, it tears your heart out. And something like The Boys, I think, is just really lets it live in both in a way that is really enjoyable to me. Again, as a fan of the show, I feel like I'm allowed to say nice things a lot about the show because I'm not I was there and not, so it's not egotistical. But that's what I appreciate it. It just lives in both. And the hardest I've ever laughed is actually when my father was in the hospital. I mean, I think that you have to have those moments in drama, or else it's just not real.
So the first season of The Boys launched all at once. And then when it came to season 2 and it was announced that it would be a weekly rollout, diehard fans had opinions on what that would be, and they wanted it all at once, a lot of people. And then a lot of people were like, no, I want it to come slowly. And I was actually talking to Eric about this because the initial reaction seemed to change the second the finale had aired and people wanted more. And I want to ask you guys about rollout and what you guys think a show like this, really deserves in a streaming environment where we were able to dissect this on a weekly basis and talk about it. And we didn't just get to sit there for 8 hours and watch Stormfront become this. We had to wait week to week to see what was going to happen. We had to wait week to week to see the Becca Butcher arc and all of that, and what that kind of means to you guys. And if I love season 1 and I love binging all of season 1, but I really enjoyed having to wait for season 2. So your guys' thoughts on one versus the other?
Well, as a viewer, I like week to week, even though sometimes I'm frustrated. I want more, but it does. You do end up watching things very quickly, and a lot of things fall away in terms of absorbing. The Boys is there's a lot of detail packed into that show, a lot of plot, a lot of character, a lot of little details packed in, and I do think it gives people time to sort of appreciate it and just let it sit for a moment, especially this season with arcing Stormfront's character. it would have been not as fun if people weren't like, oh my God, she's so awesome after episode 2, you know? So I think that as I like it as a viewer, I understand why people like to binge. I do think it helps keep the show just as more of a water cooler. Like you can discuss it with people because it's coming out. You know, it's not like, oh, I binged it all this weekend and like, oh, I'll wait for you to catch up. It keeps it all like on a level playing field so you can talk to people about it without spoiling it. And I love that personally. And I'm a super fan of a lot of shows. And so I like that.
I think everything moves so fast these days, and what we want versus what we need are often in conflict. And so I actually appreciate I'm a binger as well, but it never makes me feel good. It never like allows me to engage in a deep way, but I will do it if it's available. So sometimes we need people to say, no, you can't do that, in order to allow the space for people to process it. And I was both somebody on the show, I was both appreciative of that, but also it was painful, to be honest, because there are some big cliffhanger after 3. You know, people didn't know if it was intentional or an accident that she uses a slur. And that was scary, to have to sit in that for a week, to be like, no, it's going somewhere, and don't worry, she's going to get hers, and because it's a very intense thing. So it was painful, but also worth it, because then the conversation, in a world where we're lacking nuance, and nuance takes time and process, I feel like it allowed the conversation to become more nuanced around what the show was trying to do, specifically with the arc of my character.
No, I can totally see that. And we had like weekly think pieces on Stormfront that you couldn't have if I was just watching 8 episodes at once. I wouldn't need to theorize. I would already know. I also just want to make it clear for everyone watching that it was a creative decision to roll out the episodes that way. Rebecca and I, that was not an Amazon decision. Rebecca and I can confirm that production went and said, this is how we want to present this. So that's how we got this amazing rollout. So asking you guys, I think I only have a little bit more time with you, but asking you guys about who you're up against in the drama category, because I just think it's such an interesting grouping this season. And I kind of wanted to get your read on if you think that's because of the pandemic, because it's just fun to see a category where Bridgerton and The Boys are competing for best drama. That's fun.
You want our read, or you want our read?
Relax.
Just kidding. I think it's great. I mean, there is so much on television these days, and as we've talked about, like, drama encompasses so many different kinds of shows these days, and I think that's wonderful. I mean, I'm glad that there's an expanded number of nominees to reflect the changing, we don't just have 4 networks anymore competing against each other. And it gives people the opportunity to see more things outside of their particular category, but like superhero, or I mean, I think Bridgerton's hilarious as well. So you see that, like, these things can be they can all be in the same. I'm not being articulate. Let's just cut around this part because I'm losing the thread. But yay, it's good. Use that.
I answer yay, it's good. Rebecca.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the Crown and The Boys, those are the polar opposites in a great way. Like, they both have a lot to say about the world we live in, and in different ways. So for me, those two are it's just kind of amazing that we're here with those two in a category together. And I'm a big fan of The Crown, so I think it's an awesome show, and you know, in some ways it's got a lot. It's all about these great characters, right? That's kind of what all these shows have in common. These amazing characters and these world, like the Crown is world building, just like The Boys, you know. So I think it's awesome. I think it really it's an expansion of what it means to be great television, you know, that it's not just about a subject matter and there's not like fancy subject matter. It's just fun, good, great acting, you know, fun writing. Like it's just awesome.
And The Crown had that amazing episode where the dick wrapped around Princess Diana. Right? I remember.
I feel like
Yeah.
that was in the special features. Yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
And so my last question for you guys is, you know, Emmy nominations are prestigious. It automatically makes something sound like a bigger deal than if it, you know, didn't have an Emmy nomination. But awards have a weird connotation to them sometimes too, because then it feels like, well, this is the Emmy nominated The Boys. And does that affect the way that you guys, you know, no spoilers about season 3, but approach the show, you know, going on? If that feels like it adds pressure to it because now you're the Emmy nominated The Boys versus The Boys. Is there anything like that to it for you guys?
I don't think so. I think the thing that gets, I mean, it is amazing, like how it's crazy. It's amazing. People work really hard on this show. People work really hard on every show. Let's face it. It's an all-consuming thing to make a TV show. I think what gets you recognition is just being true to your show and yourself. You know, and so I don't think so. You know, I don't think there's added pressure. It's like the world came to The Boys, you know, for doing its thing.
I just go into every audition now with a T-shirt that says "From the Emmy-nominated The Boys." Hope that the nonsense that is Hollywood helps me get jobs that way.
Well,
I'm going to try that.
It's been such a pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you for joining us today. It was great to have you all. And for our viewers, be sure to take advantage of our free trial TheWrap Pro to be the first to know about upcoming wrap screenings and events like this. You can also register for those screenings and catch up on any past screenings you may have missed, and more by visiting TheWrap.com, screening tabs in the main navigation bar. Thank you so much, Aya and Rebecca. I appreciate it. This was lovely.